They say there's a horse that only runs at midnight. Not before, not after. Only when the world's quiet enough to hear its breath. No one's ever ridden it. No one's ever touched it. But some folks swear they've seen it. A pale white Mustang with a long black mane and hooves that leave no print in the snow. It doesn't graze, doesn't neigh. It just runs, always in the same direction, always under the moonlight, as if chasing something it once lost and never found again. Most say it's just a ghost story, a tale spun by old cowhands with more bourbon than blood. But up in Red Creek Valley, where the pine trees hold their breath and the wind hums like a lullaby for the dead, they talk about it real quiet, like saying its name too loud might call it close. They call it Moonfire. No one remembers where the name came from. Maybe it was something scribbled on a saddle once. Maybe it's just what folks started calling it. Because when it runs, its body glows faint like frost catching fire. But here's the thing. That horse ain't just some local legend. It ain't something you hear in the saloon between poker hands. It's something real. I know, because I've seen it. 3 times. Once when I was a child, hiding under the porch after my mama passed. It ran through the field behind our house, not making a sound, but every dog in town went quiet when it passed. The second time, I was 17 and wild, kissing a boy who said he'd never leave. And I opened my eyes, and there it was, watching us from the tree line. And just like that, he did leave. And the third time, well, that's the story I'm here to tell. But this ain't a story about a horse, not really. It's about a girl who vanished during a storm, a father who never stopped waiting, and the sound of hooves in the snow that still echo through the valley when the clock strikes 12. You see, some things never leave. They just forget how to come back. And maybe, just maybe, that horse is still trying to remember the way home. Now, Red Creek ain't even a dot on most maps. Just a scattering of tin-roof cabins, a post office that don't open Sundays, and a saloon where the only thing colder than the beer is the silence folks keep about the things they've seen. The land here don't forget. You walk past the same tree every day, and it watches you back. The wind don't just blow, it whispers. Sometimes you hear your name in it. Sometimes someone else's. And if you stay long enough to know which floorboards creak in the church or when the foxes cross the ridge at dusk, you'll start to feel it. That heaviness, like the ground is holding something underneath, just waiting for the right hour to let it loose. That hour? Midnight. That's when Moonfire runs. Some say it's the ghost of a cavalry horse that never stopped looking for its rider after the war. Others say it's just a trick of the moon, a shadow made by pine trees and tired eyes. But those who've heard it, really heard it, say there's a rhythm to the hoofbeats, like a memory trying to form, like grief you can't quite name. And here's the strangest part. It always runs north. Not east, not west, just north. Every time. Like it's chasing someone who never came back. Old Miss Tucker used to run the pie stand by the highway. Said she saw it once after her boy died in the mines. Said she was sitting on her porch with a pie that never got picked up. Heard hooves, looked up, There it was, white as bone, head lifted like it was sniffing the wind. And then, gone. No sound, no tracks, just cold air, and that feeling like you forgot something real important. Then there's Caleb Dunn, God rest him, who once tried to chase it down in his Ford pickup. Said it outran him in 10 seconds flat, and the radio started playing his dead wife's favorite hymn without touching the dial. He never drove at 9 again. But legends ain't what interests me. It's the silences. The way folks stop talking when you ask too direct. The way even the sheriff won't patrol that stretch of trail after dark. And the way old man Thomas Ray, who ain't spoken to anyone in years, still leaves his barn door open every single night at 11:45. Like he's waiting for something. Or someone. They say his daughter vanished in a snowstorm years back. Took her favorite horse out one afternoon and never came back. No body, no saddle, no goodbye. Just a stretch of white silence and a man who never forgave the sky. Now, I ain't saying the horse is real. I ain't saying it's a ghost. But I know what I saw. 3 times. Always at midnight, always moving north, and always alone. Unless, of course, you count the shadows. Because the last time I saw it, there was something riding just behind. Not a person, not quite. Just a shape, like smoke that hadn't figured out what to become. And maybe that's the truth of it. Moonfire don't carry a rider. It carries a memory. One that don't want to die. One that shows itself only to the ones who still got something left unfinished. So, if you ever hear hooves outside your window, slow, steady, and far too soft for any real animal, don't look out. Not unless you're ready. Because sometimes what's out there isn't what's been lost. It's what you've been trying to forget. There's a cabin in Red Creek that never got painted. Never needed it, Thomas Ray used to say. Wood's just fine being what it is. No use dressing it up to rot slower. Folks stopped visiting that cabin long before the snow started staying year-round. Long before the mailbox leaned sideways or the porch steps turned soft. Even before the barn roof sank under time like tired shoulders. But Thomas stayed. Not out of pride, not out of grief, not exactly. More like penance. He was a horseman once, one of the best. Trained Mustangs for ranches up north, even helped break wild colts for the rodeo circuit. He had a voice that horses listened to. Not loud, just steady, the kind of voice that didn't ask for control, just offered it. And he had a daughter, Ellie Ray. Now, Ellie was the sort of girl who knew every trail before she could spell her name. She'd tie her boots wrong just to feel the earth better. Fed apples to stray horses like they were old friends. She never once asked permission to ride, only forgiveness if she came back after dark. She was born with the wild in her, same as her mama. Thomas never talked much about Ellie's mama, just said she was too soft for storms and too strong for leaving. She passed when Ellie was 7. After that, it was just the 2 of them and the horses. They got by, fine. Not happy, Not really, but solid. He trained the horses. She named them all after moons. Said the sky was too big to leave unnamed. But the storm came sudden, like guilt, like things left unsaid. One day, Ellie saddled up Moonfire, her favorite mare, a white Mustang with one black ear, and rode out before breakfast. Never came back. No body, no tracks after the first mile. Just snow and silence, and a man who never forgave the sky. After that, Thomas stopped breaking horses. Sold off but one, left the barn open every night like Ellie might ride back in. He sat on the porch in the same coat he wore that day. Faded denim, elbows patched. He smelled like tobacco and pine sap and ghosts. He never remarried, never left Red Creek. The only thing that changed was his silence. It got heavier, like stones tied to memory. And folks around town, they stopped asking. They knew what grief looked like. Red Creek had seen its share. Fire, frost, war, regret. But Thomas's kind of grief, that was the kind that waited, that paced, that left the light on and the door unlocked 25 winters in a row. Some nights, kids would dare each other to walk past his place after midnight. They swore he talked to someone in the barn. Others said they saw a horse-shaped shadow cross the field behind his cabin just as the church bell struck 12. But Thomas never said a word, just sat there, listening, like the night was trying to remember how to speak. There's a kind of quiet in Red Creek you don't find anywhere else. Not peaceful quiet, but the kind that listens back. That's the quiet Thomas lived in. That's the quiet where this story truly begins. Thomas didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in absence, in things that should have been said, should have been held, should have been stopped. He believed in the weight of a door never opened, and in the sound of hooves that don't leave prints. The town offered help at first, meals left at the gate, blankets folded on the porch, prayers spoken in passing. But Thomas never opened the gate, never picked up the plates, never said thank you or go away. So, Red Creek stopped knocking. Folks said he was haunted, not by a spirit, but by time, by a moment that stretched too far forward and never let go. They said he still kept Ellie's boots by the fireplace, that he still talked to Moonfire in his sleep, that he had memorized every line of the last note she wrote him, even though she never left one. And they were right. Inside that cabin, time was stuck. The kitchen clock had stopped at 9:07 the day Ellie vanished. He never fixed it. Said it didn't matter. The world ended at 9:07. He lit the same lantern every night, though the power worked fine. Wore the same boots, though the leather had split and shrunk. And every evening, at exactly 11:45, he opened the barn door and left it wide. He swept the dirt path, brushed off the old saddle, and laid a sugar cube on the fence post, just in case. There's a trail behind his house that leads through whispering pines. Ellie carved their initials into one of those trees. He never said which one. Just walked the trail every Sunday, counting steps under his breath, like it was the only way to measure time. Some winters, the snow piled so high, you couldn't see the tops of the fence posts. The wind carved out shapes in it. Sometimes horses, sometimes faces. Once, he thought he saw her handprint on the glass. But maybe that was just the frost. Or maybe not. Thomas wasn't mad, wasn't broken. He was paused. And grief doesn't scream in places like Red Creek. It waits. It settles. It sharpens you into someone the world forgets how to name. Then came Jamie. A kid with 2 big boots and nowhere to be. 16, maybe 17. Said he was passing through. Said I heard the barn had room. Thomas didn't answer, just nodded toward the spare cot. Didn't ask who he was running from. Didn't care. But he laid 2 cups out that night. That was the first time in 25 years he did that. Jamie was the kind who didn't fill silences, didn't poke, didn't ask why the barn door stayed open. He just helped split wood, fed the chickens, and left the sugar cube where Thomas showed him. Some nights they sat by the fire and Thomas would hum a tune. A soft one, no words. Just something he used to whistle when Ellie braided her horse's mane. Jamie never said a thing. But the next night, he played it back on a rusty harmonica. And Thomas cried for the first time since the day the snow came and didn't leave. Red Creek didn't know Jamie was there. Didn't know that Thomas Ray, the ghost of a man, was learning to speak again through a kid who never asked anything of him. Didn't know that inside that cabin, a story was warming up after a very long winter. Because sometimes the heart remembers in pieces, and sometimes those pieces come home in other people's pockets. There's a kind of silence that ain't natural. The kind that falls right after something goes terribly wrong. Like the world's holding its breath, waiting to see if you noticed it break. That's the silence Thomas Ray remembered most from that day. It was early winter, the kind where the sky don't know if it wants to snow or cry. Thomas had just come back from the general store, hands red from the cold and a bag full of oats slung over his shoulder. Ellie was already out in the pasture, saddling up Moonfire. She had a scarf wrapped high around her face, eyes all lit up with that look she always got when the sky was gray and the trees looked like bones. Thomas hated that look. Not because it was reckless, though it was, but because it reminded him too much of her mother. That same wildness, that same need to go, even when nothing was chasing. "You ain't taking her out today," he said, setting the oats down and brushing snow off his hat. Ellie didn't answer right away. Just kept tightening the cinch, hands sure and steady like always. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm. Too calm. "You can't keep her cooped up all winter. She'll forget the trail." Thomas shook his head. "It's not about the damn horse, Ellie. It's the storm. It feels like it's gonna break wide open. Give it a day." She looked at him then, really looked, and he saw it, that thing he feared most, resentment. "Maybe I don't want to wait a day. Maybe I'm tired of waiting all the time." Thomas felt the words before she said them, but he didn't know how to stop them. "Maybe I'm tired of this place, of you, of the way everything here just holds still." The wind cut between them like a third person. Thomas opened his mouth, to argue maybe, to beg,
to say something fatherly, but what came out was sharp. Then go. 1 second. That's all it took. She blinked like he'd hit her, and then she turned, mounted Moonfire, and rode toward the pines without another word. Thomas stood there for a long time after she disappeared into the trees, waiting. He told himself she'd cool off. She'd ride the loop trail, get her breath back, and return before supper. She had done it before. But the snow started falling around noon. Thick, heavy stuff, like sky ash. By mid-afternoon, visibility was down to 20 feet. By nightfall, it was white out. Thomas didn't light the stove, didn't make coffee, didn't sit down. He stood by the barn door, watching the trail she'd vanished down, his breath fogging up the cold glass. By midnight, he couldn't stand it. He saddled up Old Smoky, his steadiest gelding, and rode out. No lantern, no compass, just a name in his throat and panic clawing at his chest like a bear. He searched till sunrise. No tracks, no hoof prints, no scarf. The snow had swallowed every trace of her. By the third day, the sheriff came, then the town searchers, then the dogs. Nothing. Not even a broken branch or a piece of leather. Just emptiness. Like the forest had opened its mouth and taken her whole. People said all the right things. She's tough. She'll turn up. God's watching her. But after a week, they stopped saying anything at all. They brought casseroles instead. Hugged too long, looked at their boots when they passed him in town. And Thomas, he stopped speaking too. He boarded up the spare room, burned the blankets that still smelled like her hair, put away her sketchbooks, her trail maps, her favorite cup with the chip in the rim. But he couldn't throw out the boots. They stayed by the fireplace, like ghosts, with nowhere else to go. He didn't cry. Not once. Not when the sheriff closed the case. Not when the first spring came and the barn door swung wide like it was expecting someone. Not even when he found Moonfire's halter hanging in the woodshed where it hadn't been before. But he started hearing things. Not voices. Not at first. Just hoofbeats. Soft. Slow. Always at midnight. He'd sit real still, not breathing, and listen. And then it'd be gone. He never told anyone, because what if it was real? And worse, what if it wasn't? Thomas stopped writing after that. Sold most of the tack, let the fields go wild. The barn stayed clean, but it was empty. Except for one stall. He kept that one swept, laid fresh hay, brushed the saddle once a week. Just in case. Because there's one truth Thomas Ray never said out loud. He didn't believe she was gone. Not really. He believed she was lost. And lost things, sometimes, they find their way back, even if they forget how. Time didn't pass in years anymore. It passed in winters. Thomas Ray stopped counting birthdays the year Ellie vanished, didn't mark the calendar, didn't celebrate Christmas, didn't carve another notch on the door frame she used to stand under, measuring how tall she'd grown. Instead, he marked time by snowfall, the way the frost crawled across the barn window, the sound the wind made when it howled through broken branches, the first time he saw her handwriting fade from the chalkboard in the kitchen. Sometimes he heard her laugh, not in dreams. Dreams were crueler. Dreams gave her back whole, alive, smiling. No, he heard her in waking hours, in the squeak of a fence hinge, in the way the chickens scattered like someone just passed too quick. Once, he found a braid of horsehair hanging from the gate, her way of saying good luck on long rides. But he hadn't ridden in years. He left it there. It never gathered dust, like the wind kept it clean. The townsfolk called him strange, not cruel, just far away. When kids ran by, he'd look up, but not like he was watching them. Like he was hoping one of them might turn into her, right there, right out of the blue. Like time had hiccuped and undone the worst thing it ever did. He stopped writing grocery lists, just walked the aisles in silence, picking the same things. 2 apples, 1 bag of flour, a bottle of bourbon. Every week, no matter what he still had at home. Because that's what Ellie liked when she baked, even if he hadn't touched the oven in over a decade. Neighbors tried, some more than others. Once, Miss Hallie from the diner brought a pie, cherry, Ellie's favorite. Thomas opened the door, took one look at the tin, and shut it without saying a word. He buried the pie behind the barn that night. Not out of anger, not out of shame, just because it hurt too much to taste what used to be.
On the 15th winter, he thought about leaving. Packed a bag, loaded the truck, got as far as the bridge before the engine died. Some folks said it was just bad luck. Thomas thought it was the land saying no, so he stayed. Sometimes he thought he saw her in strangers. A flash of red hair on a bus, the curve of a smile in the feed store, the way someone tied their boots too loose, like Ellie always did. And every time his heart would leap, then break again. Hope is cruel like that. It don't ask permission. It just shows up, grinning like it never left, then disappears before you can hold it. There were nights, cold ones, the kind where frost etched the inside of the window, where he swore he heard moonfire. Not the ghost horse folks whispered about, but her moonfire, the one with the black ear and the soft breath. He'd go out to the barn, bare feet in snow, and listen. One time, he thought he saw steam rising from the last stall. Another, he found fresh prints, but no horse. Not ever. One winter, a letter came. No return address, no name, just 5 words on yellow paper. She remembers. So do I. He read it once, twice, 100 times. It was the first thing he put in the fireplace that refused to burn. He still kept it, folded into the lining of his coat, carried it everywhere, touched it with 2 fingers every night before sleep, like a prayer too fragile to say out loud. Thomas grew slower. His hand shook more, his back bent deeper, but he never missed a night opening the barn door at 11:45. Some habits ain't choices. They're the last pieces of someone you ain't ready to bury. And that's what his life became. Not living exactly, not dying, just waiting. A man turned into a shadow, a story the town stopped telling. A father trying to keep a porch light on in a storm that wouldn't pass. But the thing about pain, real pain, it don't make noise. It don't scream. It sits in your bones like old cold. It turns your heartbeat into an echo.
And for Thomas Ray, that echo was shaped like hoofbeats. Midnight. Every night. Steady. Soft. Northbound. Like they were carrying her memory through time itself. It started with a sound. Soft. Distant. Like thunder pretending to be a memory. Jamie was chopping wood by the side shed. Not for heat, really, just habit. The snow had just started falling, light like sifted sugar, the kind Ellie used to say meant it wouldn't last. That's when he heard it. Clip, clop, clip, clop. Hoofbeats, but slow, not frantic, measured. Too regular for wind or echo. Jamie stood still, axe mid-air, his breath fogging in front of him. And the sound stopped. He walked to the fence, looked out toward the ridge. Nothing. Just pine and shadow and the hush of snowfall. Still, he couldn't shake it. That night he told Thomas. Didn't mean to, exactly. They were sitting by the fire, Thomas whittling a piece of scrap wood, Jamie tuning his harmonica by instinct. Thought I heard a horse earlier, Jamie muttered. Real casual. Didn't even look up. Thomas froze. Not visibly, but Jamie could feel it. Like the whole room held its breath. What time? Thomas asked, voice scratchy. Don't know, maybe 11:30? Thomas didn't say a word. Just stood up, walked to the back window, and stared into the dark. After that, Jamie kept hearing it. Not every night, but close. Sometimes it was faint, like it was riding past another memory 2 hills over. Other times, it was right outside. Hoofbeats on frozen ground. No tracks, no breath in the cold, just sound and presence. Then came the letter. Jamie found it tucked under his pillow. No name, same yellow paper, but this one said, "Open the barn, midnight. He'll understand." Jamie showed it to Thomas. Thomas stared at it so long, Jamie thought he'd gone to sleep with his eyes open. Then he said, real low, Ellie used to leave notes like that. That night, they both waited. Jamie brewed coffee. Thomas lit the lantern. They didn't talk much. What was there to say? At exactly 11:59, Thomas rose and opened the barn door. The wind howled once, like a long, rattling gust, like a woman crying. Then silence. Not emptiness, a charged silence. Jamie stepped out first. Snow was fresh, untouched. But halfway down the trail, clear as a brand in dry dirt, were hoof prints. Single set, narrow, deliberate, headed north. Thomas said nothing. Didn't blink. Just picked up Ellie's old saddlebag and carried it into the barn. Laid it on the rail, ran his hand along the leather, and whispered, "I never forgot you, baby girl." Jamie watched him, eyes wide, heart thumping. It wasn't just grief. It was belief. Something had changed. From that night on, the hoofbeats came regular. Midnight. Every time. Sometimes Jamie would hear a soft whinny, like a memory calling home. Thomas stopped sleeping. Sat by the barn most nights, lantern burning low. Waiting. Not just for the horse, but for her. One night, Jamie walked out early, just past 11, snow falling light, and he saw her. Not clearly, just a shape, outlined in frost. A girl, red scar, tall in the saddle, and a white horse with one black ear. He blinked, and they were gone. But he ran back inside, breathless. "I saw her," he gasped. "Thomas, I saw her!" Thomas didn't ask what she looked like, didn't ask if he was sure. He just whispered, "Where?" They followed the trail the next morning. Prints still fresh, led straight to the northern ridge where the pines thinned and the air always smelled like cold iron. And there, tied to a tree, was Ellie's old saddlebag. Inside, a picture. Ellie, age 17, grinning, hair windblown, writing on the back, "For when you're ready to forgive yourself." Thomas dropped to his knees, not out of pain, out of weight. Like he'd been holding the world on his back and someone finally said, "You can let go now." That was the night the hoofbeats stopped. Just stopped. No more notes. No more wind in the rafters. Just stillness. But this time, it didn't feel like absence. It felt like peace. And Thomas Ray, he slept straight through till morning for the first time in 25 winters.
Healin' don't come with fanfare. Ain't like a parade showing up at your door with balloons and brass. It's quieter than that. More like the way frost melts off a saddle, one slow drop at a time. And for Thomas Ray, it started with bread. Jamie woke up one morning to the smell of something burning. Not fire, just toast. He stumbled into the kitchen, eyes still full of sleep, and there was Thomas, standing by the stove like he'd always known how. Wore an apron that said Red Creek Rodeo, 1996. Hair sticking up, toast black as coal. He turned, held up a plate. "Think I might have forgot how long it takes," he muttered. Jamie took it anyway. Ate the edges, didn't say a word about the smoke. Because that morning, Thomas Ray was trying. And that meant something. Later that week, Thomas brought out Ellie's trail maps, spread them across the table like holy scripture. He pointed to one spot, way out past Dead Horse Bend. That's where we used to camp. She always swore there was a spring hidden under the rocks. He smiled real soft, then folded the map like it was glass and put it back. He didn't say why, but Jamie knew. Remembering didn't hurt as much anymore. The barn got cleaner, the porch too. Thomas mended the roof himself. Didn't ask for help. Didn't curse when the hammer slipped. Just kept at it. Every nail, every board, a piece of penance undone. Then, one night, it snowed real hard. Jamie woke up to the wind screaming against the glass, and Thomas standing at the door in his long coat. Didn't say nothing, just pointed outside. Jamie followed him into the dark. They trudged through knee-deep snow till they reached the back pasture. There, standing under the old cedar tree, was a horse. Not white, not moonfire, just a plain brown gelding. Shaggy mane, tired eyes,
lost, like it had been wandering a long time just to end up here. Thomas walked right up, hands out. The horse didn't move, didn't flinch, just let him stroke its neck like they'd known each other forever. "He's alone," Thomas said. "Like me." Jamie didn't speak, just watched as Thomas led the horse back to the barn like he'd done it every night for 25 years. They named him Dusty, started feeding him oats soaked in honey water, brushed him every morning. Dusty never tried to run, never spooked. He stayed. And with him, so did something else, a kind of peace. Come spring, Jamie found a small leather-bound journal tucked behind some canned peaches in the pantry. Inside were letters from Thomas, all unsent, all addressed to Ellie. Pages and pages of them. Some angry, some tender, some so raw Jamie had to close the book and breathe. He didn't show Thomas, but one day he found him sitting by the porch, eyes far away. Jamie sat next to him, said soft, "You ever think she forgave you?" Thomas stared at the mountains for a long time. Then he nodded, once. "I think she was waiting for me to forgive myself first." That night, Jamie started writing too. Not letters, just stories. About Red Creek, about silence, about fathers and daughters and the sound a horse makes when it remembers your voice. They planted wildflowers in Ellie's favorite spot. They fixed the swing behind the barn. They lit a lantern and let it drift down the river, watching it float away like a goodbye that finally knew where to go. Thomas didn't cry, but he laughed. He laughed so hard one night when Dusty tried to eat his old hat that Jamie thought the stars might fall out of the sky. Some healing is loud. Most of it ain't. Most of it's slow, uneven, fragile, but real. And by that fall, Red Creek started looking less like a graveyard and more like a place someone could live again. The first real clue came on a Tuesday. Jamie was clearing out the old mail crate in the shed, the one Thomas never opened anymore. It was stuffed with flyers, seed catalogs, a few unopened envelopes thick with dust. He was halfway through tossing it all when a yellowed envelope caught his eye. No postmark, no stamp, just a scrawl on the front that read, "To Dad, for real this time." He opened it with hands that didn't feel like his. Inside was a photograph, faded, but sharp enough to see a familiar face. Ellie. Older, but those same eyes, same crooked smile. She was standing in front of a bar with peeling red paint and a sign above the door that read, "The Midnight Saloon. We never close. We just disappear." Behind her stood a white horse with a black ear. Moonfire. Jamie dropped the photo. His heart slammed hard against his ribs. The shed felt too small, too quiet. He stared at the picture again, looked for anything, a street sign, a license plate, anything. In the corner of the image, barely visible, was a scrap of a newspaper pinned to the saloon door. June 8th, open mic night, Jackson Ridge. Jackson Ridge? He knew that name. Wasn't on any major maps. Wasn't in any real direction. But folks in town whispered about it, like it was a myth, a place that shifted, Sometimes it was there, sometimes it wasn't. He ran back to the house, breath coming in short bursts. Thomas was out front, fixing the gate latch. Jamie held out the photo like it was on fire. "She's out there!" Thomas looked. And looked. His fingers trembled, but his voice was quiet. "That's her." Jamie nodded. "She sent it. She wanted you to see." Thomas sat down hard on the porch step. Didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, "Jackson Ridge only shows up for those carrying something heavy." Jamie nodded again. "So we go." That night, Thomas packed a bag. Old boots, journal, Ellie's compass. He tied Dusty with extra care. Didn't say much, but before they rode out, he looked at Jamie and said, "If this is real, I don't know what I'll say to her." Jamie smiled. "Start with, 'I'm still here.' The rest can wait." The wind was quiet as they headed north, towards a place not found on any map. And as they disappeared down the moonlit trail, behind them, in the soft dirt of the pasture, fresh hoof prints began to appear. The road north didn't start with a sign. It started with forgetting. First, the mile markers disappeared. Then the power lines, then the sound of other engines. Just wind, dirt, and the crunch of hooves beneath them. Dusty walked steady, like he knew the way before they did. Jamie kept checking the compass. The needle spun twice and quit. Thomas just smiled. "That's how you know we're close." Jamie frowned. "Close to what?" Thomas didn't answer. By the third day, the land started changing. The pines grew taller, but the ground got softer. Snow fell even when the sky was clear. Once, they passed a patch of blue wildflowers growing straight out of frost. Jamie stopped to touch one. It vanished, like memory. They came to a ridge at dusk. Beyond it, fog. Thick, silvery stuff that shimmered like lake water. Thomas stopped. "She always said Jackson Ridge had no door, just a feeling, like walking into someone's dream." Jamie swallowed. "Then let's dream together." They rode in, and the fog didn't part. It absorbed him, swallowed horse, man, and heartache whole. The air got warmer, sweeter. Jamie smelled smoke, vanilla, old bourbon. He blinked, and suddenly they weren't in the pines no more. They were in a town. A small one. Looked like it belonged in a snow globe from 1890. Oil lamps, wooden sidewalks, muted music floating from somewhere down the street. And at the very end of Main Street, the saloon. It was just like the picture. Peel and red paint, creaky signs swinging in a wind that didn't touch your coat. The Midnight Saloon. We never close, we just disappear. Thomas dismounted. His boots hit the ground like old thunder. Jamie followed, hand on the saddle horn for balance. They stood there for a long while, neither speaking. Then Thomas said, "What if she's not inside?" Jamie looked at him. "What if she is?" They stepped up to the porch. The boards didn't creak, didn't groan, just welcomed him. Thomas reached for the door, hesitated, then slowly pushed it open. Inside was dim, warm, not dusty, not stale. There were folks inside, but no one turned to look. A man nursed a drink in the corner. A woman laughed at nothing by the piano. And behind the bar stood a tall man with eyes like they'd seen everyone's sorrow. He nodded once. "We've been expecting you." Thomas stepped forward, his voice barely a whisper. "Is she here?" The bartender smiled. "Not yet, but she's close." Thomas gripped the edge of the counter. "How do you know?" The man leaned in. "Because she remembers. And remembrance always leads folks home." Jamie looked around. On the wall behind the bar hung a photo. Ellie. Again. But younger. And next to it, another photo. Just added. Thomas. Taken just yesterday. Same coat, same haunted eyes. Jamie's voice cracked. "That's not possible." The bartender chuckled. "Not much is, but everything feels right, don't it?" Thomas turned to Jamie. "We wait." And so they did. At the bar, by the fire, with a drink that never ran out and a silence that didn't ache. Waiting for a door only love could open. The door didn't creak when it opened. It just breathed, like it had been waiting too long to exhale. Thomas turned before Jamie did, his glass stilled halfway to his lips, his face drained of all color. The bartender didn't move, just nodded once, slow and reverent, like he was watching something holy unfold. She stepped through the doorway, older now, but still Ellie. Hair a little shorter, eyes just as sharp, wrapped in a threadbare duster the color of old prairie sky. And behind her, moonfire. Real. Alive. The black ear twitched once, like even the horse remembered. Ellie looked around. Didn't speak. Her eyes scanned the room like she expected the place to vanish if she blinked too hard. Then she saw him. Thomas. Still. Breathless. Small. She took one step, then another. Her boots echoed once against the old wood floor. Jamie couldn't breathe, didn't dare to move. This moment belonged to them. Thomas opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. He stood, slow, like every joint remembered 20 winters at once. Then voice cracking like ice under spring thaw. I thought you were dead." Ellie didn't cry, not yet. She just looked at him. Studied his face like it was a letter she'd never finished reading. Then, "I thought I had to be." Jamie blinked hard. Thomas reached forward, then stopped himself. "You sent the letters?" She nodded. "Not all at once. I needed to know you were still... you." He laughed, dry, tired. "Still me. Mean and broken?" She shook her head. "Meaning stubborn." They both smiled. Tiny, cracked things, like flowers growing through cement. Moonfire let out a soft nicker, as if to say, "We're here now, say it." Thomas swallowed. Then he did. All of it. "I'm sorry."
For that night. For the words. For not chasing after you. for thinking pride was more important than holding you one more time, for letting the years go by and never learning how to be soft. Ellie stepped closer. She touched his face like she wasn't sure it was real. Then she whispered, "You were soft, Dad. You just didn't know how to show it without breaking." He crumpled, like a barn wall finally given out after the last storm. She caught him, held him. 20 winters fell away. Behind them, the saloon faded. Patrons gone, bartender gone. Even the dust hung quieter. Only Jamie remained, and the horse, and 2 hearts learning to beat together again. They walked out together, Thomas, Ellie, Jamie, and Moonfire. The saloon didn't shut behind them. It simply faded, like fog lifting from an old lake at the exact moment the sun rises. No sound, no echo, just gone. Outside, the sky had changed. Not darker, not lighter, just still. Snow fell, soft as ash, the kind that never sticks, just kisses your shoulders like it remembers you. Ellie took a breath, long and deep. "Smells the same," she said, "like cedar and firewood." Thomas looked at her. "You remember that?" She smiled. "I never forgot." They didn't talk much on the ride back. Didn't need to. Moonfire led. Dusty followed. The rhythm of hooves like a lullaby that had been waiting to be sung right. Jamie rode behind them both, watching the way Thomas leaned just a little closer every time Ellie shifted in the saddle. He thought, this is what healing looks like. Not loud, not fast, but real. At the ridge, they turned once, looked back. The town was gone, completely. No buildings, no tracks, not even wind. Just the forest, like it had always been there. Like Jackson Ridge was never meant to stay. Back at Red Creek, the porch light flickered on, as if it knew they were coming. Jamie unsaddled Moonfire and Dusty, patted both. No words, just thanks. Inside, the fire was still warm. Thomas poured 3 cups of coffee. Didn't ask how Ellie took hers. She grabbed it with both hands and said, "Still too bitter." He grinned. Runs in the family. That night, they didn't go to bed. They stayed up around the hearth. Ellie told stories from towns that didn't exist on maps. Places where the stars hung low and bars only opened if you remembered who you were. Jamie asked questions. Thomas listened. Really listened. For the first time in his life, he listened without trying to fix. At dawn, Ellie rose, walked out onto the porch, looked east. Thomas followed, stood beside her. "You gonna stay?" Ellie didn't answer right away. She looked at the sky, at the trees, at the swing she used to fall asleep in when storms rolled through. "I don't know," she said, "but I'm not leaving just yet." Thomas nodded, didn't push. Jamie came out, stretching, hold up 3 mugs of fresh brew. "We can figure it out, day by day." Ellie took hers. "I'd like that." And for the first time in a long, long while, there was laughter on the porch. Real, belly-deep, ridiculous laughter.
the kind that chased ghosts away. Later that week, Ellie found her old boots in the barn. She cleaned them, put them on, walked into town like she never left. And Red Creek? It didn't ask questions, just welcomed her back, like it had been waiting too. Thomas woke up with a start. Sweat clung to his back. The fire in the hearth had long gone cold. Outside, morning was still deciding whether it wanted to rise. He sat up on the old couch, blanket half fallen, boots still on. Dusty's saddle was where he always left it. Moonfire was gone. Always had been. And the saloon? No one ever built a saloon out past Red Creek. He rubbed his face, hands calloused, shaking slightly. Then slowly, almost afraid, he turned to the small wooden table near the window. And there it was, the photograph. Faded, edges curled. Ellie, standing in front of a peeling red building with a white horse at her side. The back of the photo read in her handwriting, "To Dad. For real this time." Thomas didn't know if it had always been there. Didn't know if he'd dreamed it and made it real or remembered it from a life he'd forgotten how to live. He didn't move for a long time, just stared. Then he laughed, soft, strange. Not bitter, not broken, just warm. He got up, slow as ever, made a pot of coffee, sat on the porch. The sun peeked over the ridge like it was shy. Birds were late today, or maybe Thomas had just woken too early. He looked out across the pasture. No sign of Moonfire, but Dusty was there, head buried in a pile of frost-kissed hay. Thomas watched him for a long while, and then footsteps. Jamie stepped out, hair wild from sleep. "You're up early." Thomas handed him a mug. "Dreamed something?" Jamie sat beside him. Didn't ask what. Didn't have to. They watched the fog rise off the grass together, like breath from the earth. After a while, Thomas spoke. She was there, Ellie, talking like nothing ever changed. She forgave me. Jamie looked over. Didn't blink. You believe it? Thomas thought about it. Smiled. I don't know, but it sure felt like I could. They sat in silence. Then Jamie reached into his jacket, pulled out a folded sheet of paper. Found this last week behind the barn. Thomas took it. Unfolded, slow. It was a letter, unfinished. His own handwriting, addressed to Ellie. And the last line read, "Maybe someday we'll meet again. Somewhere strange. Somewhere that only opens at midnight." Thomas's breath caught. He folded it again, carefully, as if it might break. So maybe... Jamie didn't finish the sentence. Didn't have to. Somewhere in the stillness, a crow called once. A breeze passed through the porch beams, smelled faintly of bourbon and wildflowers that shouldn't be bloom this time of year. Thomas looked up at the sky, not searching for answers, just listening. And in that moment, with no proof, no ending, no saloon, he felt lighter. Like Maybe grief didn't end, but it thinned. Let in air. Like maybe dreams didn't lie. They just told truth sideways. Some say dreams are where we go to try again. Others say they're not real, that they're just tricks of a tired mind. But sometimes, they leave behind something. A scent, a feeling, a memory that wasn't yours, but now is. If you ever find yourself riding alone and the night feels heavier than usual, look out past the ridgeline, past what maps call the end. And maybe, just maybe, you'll see the lights of a saloon that isn't supposed to be there, and someone waiting inside, with a question that's been waiting years to be asked. Tonight, what is it that you'd like to forget? And if you do, don't answer right away. Sit. Breathe. Let the music play. Because healing doesn't come like thunder. It comes quiet. Like snow. Like a voice you thought you'd never hear again. Good night, traveler, and may your dreams be kind.